Moments ago, the Senate holding two votes on two different ways out of this stalemate. One with border wall money, one without. Both failed. Yet the bill without funding for the wall garnered two more votes overall, with 6 Republican senators breaking from President Trump. And as the federal government continues to inflict this pain on its own citizens, all because of President Trump's demand for a border wall, the message from the Trump administration and Trump re-election campaign has not really recently seemed to be one of sympathy for the furloughed workers. It's been this.
There are some federal workers who are going to homeless shelters to get food.
Well, I know they are, and I don't really quite understand why. The 30 days of pay that some people will be out, there's no real reason why they shouldn't be able to get a loan against it.
This is so much bigger than any one person. It is a little bit of pain, but it's going to be for the future of our country.
Go get a loan. Just a little bit of pain. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross and senior advisor to the Trump campaign, Laura Trump, are now trying to clarify that they are indeed sympathetic to the plight of the 800,000 unpaid federal workers, not to mention federal contractors who won't see back pay, and all of those who depend upon all of them for their own businesses, cab drivers, lunch truck workers, and on and on. Still, to many of those suffering, those comments assuredly today sounded a bit Marie Antoinette-esque, particularly given that tomorrow will mark the second pay stub that will read 0.00, a full month of no pay. CNN's Abby Phillips starts off our coverage from the White House.
Accusations of tone deafness today as Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross wonders out loud why furloughed federal workers are relying on food banks to make ends meet.
I know they are, and I don't really quite understand why, because as I mentioned before, the obligations that they would undertake, say a borrowing from a bank or a credit union, are in effect federally guaranteed. So the 30 days of pay that some people will be out, there's no real reason why they shouldn't be able to get a loan against it.
Ross, who is estimated to be worth $700 million, seemingly out of touch with workers who will soon have missed 2 paychecks. But after several hours of scrutiny on social media and cable TV, Ross tried to clean it up.
All I was trying to do is make sure that they're aware that there are possible other things that could help somewhat mitigate their problems.
His comments coming after this from the president's daughter-in-law and campaign advisor, Laura Trump, talking about the impacted federal workers.
It's not fair to you, and we all get that, but this is so much bigger than any one person. It is a little bit of pain, but it's going to be for the future of our country.
Democrats pounced on the seemingly tone-deaf comments.
Many of these federal employees live paycheck to paycheck. Secretary Ross, they just can't call their stockbroker and ask them to sell some of their shares. They need that paycheck.
I don't know, is this the let them eat cake kind of attitude?
Meantime, in a late-night tweet, Trump backing down from his latest conflict with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, tweeting that he would not seek to deliver the State of the Union address at another location after Pelosi pulled her invitation to do the address in the House chamber, citing the shutdown. White House aides brainstormed alternative venues for the speech for days, but none appealed to the president. Pelosi taking note of Trump's uncharacteristic retreat.
Thank you for recognizing that it's inappropriate to have a State of the Union address.
Now that both Senate proposals have failed on the Senate floor, there are some signs that talks may be resuming. Senator Chuck Schumer, the minority leader in the Senate, just walked into Mitch McConnell's office on the Hill to talk about the path forward. And we are learning that White House aides are considering convening yet another meeting of what they're calling the Gang of 8 here, the leaders on both sides in the House and the Senate, Democrats and Republicans, to come back to the White House. That might be their first meeting in over 2 weeks since President Trump had that infamous Situation Room meeting that he stormed out of. Jake?
Yeah, it's incredible. They haven't even spoken, the Democratic leaders, with the president in more than 2 weeks. Abby Phillip, thank you so much. I want to play another part. It's not getting as much attention from that Wilbur Ross interview on CNBC. This is about the 800,000 federal employees who have not been paid. As of tomorrow, it will be a full month of not being paid. Take a listen.
Put it in perspective. you're talking about 800,000 workers. And while I feel sorry for the individuals that have hardship cases, 800,000 workers, if they never got their pay, which is not the case, they will eventually get it. But if they never got it, you're talking about 1/3% on our GDP. So it's not like it's a gigantic number overall.
So you're a Republican pollster. You provide message points and talking advice.
That's not involved with that. That's not me.
No, I'm not holding you responsible. I'm saying, is that not the exact opposite of what you would recommend?
Yeah, that's about the exact opposite. Because, look, where do I even start? First of all, talking about this in terms of GDP is the wrong approach. Because just, I believe, yesterday, you had Kevin Hassett, one of the president's chief economic advisors, say we might actually have 0% GDP growth for this quarter because of the shutdown. So that's number one. Number two, 800,000 workers not getting paid for a month. There's polling out yesterday where people were asked, how many paychecks could you miss before it got bad for you and you couldn't pay your bills? And for over half of America, the answer is 2 or more paychecks. Like, that's when things get really bad, and that's what's about to happen. This is not just about GDP, although that story is going to be ugly on its own. This is absolutely not the way to talk about what this shutdown is about.
In fact, let me just put up that poll that you just referred to. It's from Fox News, and it shows that 54% of the American people say that they can't miss any 1 or 2 paychecks, and that's where these 800,000 workers are. Chuck Schumer seized on the comments of Wilbur Ross. Not surprisingly, David, take a listen.
Those comments are appalling and reveal the administration's callous indifference towards the federal workers it is treating as pawns. Secretary Ross's comments are the 21st century equivalent of let them eat cake.
So the president's been pretty good about staying on his message, which is this is about national security, this is about national security. He hasn't really expressed sympathy for the workers, but he has stayed on the message. But I got to believe that you are not a big fan of Wilbur Ross's comments.
That's insensitive and just not. And he went back out and tried to clean it up. Look, everyone around this table has worked for people or been in situations where their boss has gone out and said something they need to walk back. You need to walk that back. Look, what is being overlooked, I think, though, is a vote that took place in the House yesterday where on a rule, right, if you're in the minority, there's not many ways you can bring things up. But the Republicans put forth a bill yesterday under a rule where the government wouldn't reopen, but all the federal workers would receive their paycheck for January. And it was defeated, but it did get about, I think it got 10 or 12 Democratic votes. So the Democrats have had an opportunity, if they were really, really sincere about their concern for these 800,000 workers, they could have said, listen, we'll vote to give these folks their paycheck and we'll continue to negotiate, right? I mean, if they were really concerned, that would have gotten some play. I see that picked up and nowhere in the news, that story got picked up that 10 Democrats, some folks fell off. There was a vote last week, I think 6 folks voted with the Republicans, 6 Democrats. I think about another 6 joined with them this time. And so, they're going to see there's going to be some maneuvering someplace along here. There's going to be, everyone's looking for an exit ramp. Nobody wants to see people continue to suffer. And so maybe that's a way forward.
Let me tell you why I didn't get any play, because Democrats at this point in the House have voted 10 times actually, to actually just reopen the government and make sure.
Yeah, but that's a non-starter, Simone. Everyone's going to find a third way.
I don't understand why it's a non-starter, though, because Republicans before Christmas voted on this same bill that Democrats have. Republicans in the Senate. And so when the House brought up this same bill, the only reason, if we just all want to be honest, the only reason Republicans are not going along with these bills that they previously, at least in the Senate, voted for, is because Donald Trump has signaled he won't sign them.
Right.
But Congress, guess what? That's written. There's a fail-safe for this. If the president won't sign something, and if everyone believes the government should be open, then pass something that's veto-proof and get the government back.
And in fact, the Democratic bill in the Senate got 2 more votes than the Republican bill, and 6 Republicans broke and voted with the Democrats on that. How does this end, do you think? I mean, you've been through shutdowns, but not any this long.
Well, how it typically ends is that we vote, or Democrats and Republicans vote on a clean CR, and they agree to negotiate about other issues. I think that's what Democrats have been proposing for some time. It seems like, if you look at the vote today, that there are a number of Republicans, especially ones who are vulnerable in 2020, who are open to that. Let's just get the government open, and then let's have a discussion. Now, if you're
president, want to explain to America what a clean CR is.
A
government funding bill without
a government funding bill that would allow the government to open, but it wouldn't have a lot of issues on both sides. And so my bet is that's what we end up with. This is ultimately up to President Trump. But if you look at all of the polling that has come out over the past 24 hours about this, his argument on national security is not working. 60% of the public blames him, and they're more angrier about the shutdown than they are concerned about national security. So there's a political calculation from him as well.
So, David, let me just ask you, because the polling is horrible for the president, and it keeps getting worse. I mean, the American people, whether you think that it's fair or not, they're holding President Trump responsible. And
he did say, I'm responsible for the shutdown.
Right. That's one reason why. And they're holding him responsible, and his approval rating is sinking even with his own supporters.
Hey, look, I think it's a bad look for everybody when the government doesn't work, right? People in America send people to Washington to work, right? This government should function. That's what you're sent here to do. Sent here to negotiate. Legislators are to legislate. The executive branch is to lead. And that's all missing right now. So it's a bad look for everybody. The government needs to reopen. The president needs to come to the middle. The speaker needs to move to the middle and need to figure this out.